Hello, and welcome to the Intelligentleman podcast, season 3. And I got something very exciting to share with you guys. First of all, let me just say thank you. Thank you to everyone who has supported and shared and liked and listened and watched my podcasts for season 1 and 2. It has been an extraordinary journey for me, and I look forward to bringing you even more content, even more ideas and thoughts that we all can conversate on and build on. And, it's just been overwhelming that the support that I've been receiving about coming back with season 3. And so, we talked about a lot of things in season 1 and season 2, from a wide range of topics. And so, I've really struggled to say that, hey, well, I've talked about a lot of things. And so what more is there to talk about? But, I also came to the realization, and it's always been in me, and it's always been something that I've known, that knowledge and wisdom is infinite, and so there's always something you can learn, that you can express. And so with that being said, I said to myself, well, since we've talked about a lot of these things, why don't we come back and actually, go over some of these things in more detail, right? And from the perspective of experience, the experiences that have happened since those things, and I'm very excited. I am, grateful, and I am so, just amazed at the way that life unfolds. And, one of my core tenets is to be patient, to be kind, compassionate, but it's also to remain a student, to always learn, to always look within, and not just learn things outside of me, but to learn and about myself, and to continuously hone my ability of bettering myself through whatever means that comes, and being open to that, and being open to the knowledge that that it can come in many forms, and that I don't have to put it into a box in order to selfishly decide what it looks like, right? Because a lot of times that perception is limited, and because we're doing that perception from that particular moment in time. And when that happens, you're not tapping into the limitlessness of the infinite. And so you can't mold it into what you want it to be, unless you are allowing it to blossom in a natural way without interference. And a great, way of looking at it, which also happens to be the title for this particular episode, is reset, rebirth. And what month are we in? Spring, which is, decidedly the beginning of the natural year, right? Because it symbolizes the beginning of a new cycle of seasons, right? And so with that being said, we're going to take a pause for the cause, and we're going to come right back. All right. Don't go anywhere. Hello, and welcome back. And as you can see, it's kind of blurry, but that's just for privacy reasons. I want to make sure that people's privacy are being protected. But as you can see, I'm out in nature, and I'm enjoying the time, and it's peaceful. And, part of what we're talking about this time is, it's all about reset. It's all about rebirth, right? Part of resetting in your life is, being able to reconnect with your roots. And there's nothing more root about you than nature, right? Because this physical form comes directly from nature. So that is definitely the root of where we come from, who we are in this physical form. So reconnecting with that part of yourself is necessary so that you can maintain the balance. Because a lot of times we put a lot of emphasis on the mental and the spiritual, but we don't really take into consideration how the physical plays a part in that. One of my favorite spiritual gurus that I listen to, Sadhguru, he speaks about it all the time, and he says that in order for you to really experience the spiritual path, you have to get the body out the way, meaning you don't want to be hindered in any way by your body, because once you're hindered by your body, you actually it's kind of hard to focus when you have to focus on physical aspects of yourself, right? And we see it all the time. People get caught up in the way they look, the way that they feel, and these things. And when that happens, you kind of lose at that moment. You're moving yourself outside of your spiritual nature. And so in order for you to really get in touch with that, and it's not to say that you're not, the goal is always to blend it all together, right? But in order for you to really realize the true extent of your spiritual nature, you have to connect with it a lot more and be outside of your physical element a lot more, right? And so that's part of what you want to do. You want to make sure that you're connecting. Last season, we talked about yoga. And one of the last episodes that I did for the podcast was with Himani, and she's a yoga instructor, yoga teacher actually, but she's also much more than that. So make sure you go back and check out that episode if you're interested in learning those things. But there's a lot of different methods, a lot of different things that you can do to help you with that, right? Just being active and eating right helps you with those things, but if you are looking for some sort of guidance or to try something new, experience something new, which is always good, then definitely go out and experience the world, and you'll come to realize that there's a lot more out here, and it aligns with a lot of things that's just base part of our human nature. It's not really about any religion or any way of life. It's more so just the things that connect us. And so once you start seeing that and you start realizing that, then you start seeing similarities in a lot of different things. And the sun is coming out now, so now you're going to start seeing the shine. But so another aspect of reset, right, that's physical, would be the mental, right? Sometimes you got to have a mental reset. Sometimes you got to be able to take time out to not worry about things and to just sit with yourself, let the thoughts flow. That doesn't mean that you don't let your thoughts flow. It doesn't mean that you're not allowing yourself to think and to feel. It just means that you're not allowing those thoughts or those feelings to make you react in any kind of way. Right? You're just sitting with them and observing them. And then from that, you gain insight, because a lot of times we're again, distracted by how things may seem, and we don't really see the benefits or see the silver lining, as I like to say, in what's truly happening, right? Because there's always a larger picture, as witnessed in nature, right? There's always a larger picture. If you think about it, when you look and you see right now, you got squirrels running around me, you got birds chirping, you got pollen all over everything, right? You may look at these individual events and say to yourself, well, hey, what does that have to do with me? But the squirrels, they're looking for food, right? They're looking for food, and that food is all around us, right? So it's not that they feel like there's no food, right? So they're not thinking in a lack mentality. They're not saying, oh well, there's no food, so I might as well just give up, right? They're not saying that. They're out there looking for it because they know it's there. See, it's a knowledge to them because it's instinct, right? So instinctually, the animals know that all of their needs are taken care of. All they have to do is just go out and get it, right? So that's how we should be. That's how we should be. So even when we're thinking about things and worried about how things are going to come out, we should always know that things are provided to us and that we can always find it if we still ourselves and follow our nature, right? And like the pollen, right? The pollen is actually creating more life, right? It's germinating, other plants and, causing them to grow and to bloom and to blossom, right? Which is the rebirth from, the winter, right? So the cycle, right? The cycle. So even that, so that it's part of a larger cycle, right? So let's analyze that for a second. So if we it's safe to assume that, right? Because it's pretty much right in our face, right? But what about us? Are we part of a larger cycle? Are we part of something larger than what you can see if you're just focusing on yourself? We are. And when you start to understand the connectedness of life and you understand that you can't separate it. One of the big movements that's going on right now is to save the soil, right? The soil is estimated to lose its fertility within the next 60 years if we continue in the way that we're going, right? So what does that mean? That means that as a lot of people have been speculating and talking about, it means that it will cause mass food shortages and as human nature, people fighting over these resources because they feel that they are limited. And again, this idea, this thought is not coming into our experience just for us to say, oh, okay, that's how that works. Oh, that's cool. Or just for us to, kind of make a trendy, idea about it. It's coming into our existence now because it's something that we have to take action on. So we really need to take action on that. And if you're looking for a way to help do that, Sadhguru and the Isha Foundation, they have a very strong program. And it's a nonprofit foundation, international foundation that you can get with that. They have a strong program for that, and they're going out talking to a lot of leaders and stuff like that about things that you can do. So if you want to get involved in that, I encourage you to do that because we all need to. But yeah, so that's part of what the cycle is, and as the pollen and as the flowers bloom, as they say, the birds and the bees, right? So now you hear the birds chirping. A lot of those are baby birds, right? Baby birds that are being hatched and born. So the cycle of life is beginning anew. You also have, like I said, I mentioned the bees. That as the flowers are blooming, right? Because once the flowers bloom, they start to, they can go to these flowers and they can get their nectar so that they can create their honey, right? So this is all part of a larger cycle, right? And this cycle was here before we were. This cycle was here, right? So and when I say that, I mean the capacity, the potential for this cycle, right? The knowledge, the science that is behind it was already there. It's not something that was created by anybody, right? So what does that tell you? That tells you that there's a different type of design. There's a design that's higher than anything that we are currently aware of, or may be aware of. Because once you actually feel that connectedness, you're aware of it, but you may not. But still don't have the full picture. Because all of the water in this lake behind me can't be contained in one cup, right? So you can't contain limitlessness in a limited container. So that's one thing about it. So that's why, that's another precept of wisdom. That is why we are connected beings, why we're a community and not just separate individuals, because limitlessness cannot be contained in a limited container. It will overfill, it would be wasted, and as we know, nothing in nature is wasted. Nothing. It all gets recycled, it all gets reused, it's all for a purpose. And so being that that's the case, you should never look at people and say, okay, well, that person is no longer valuable, right? Because everybody has value. And if you say that about one person, then you must be saying it about everyone. And so, which would include yourself, right? That old adage, as they say, once you point one finger, three more are pointing back at you, right? So, you have to, and it doesn't mean that you don't hold people accountable. And it doesn't mean that you don't, move in justice and logic and reason. It just means that you should always leave space for people to change, because people do change all the time. And that's, again, what we're talking about. We're talking about the rebirth, the regrowth, the renewing of life, right? In all its aspects, in all of its grandeur. So it's really important also to know when there's change needed, right? So let's get into that a little bit, because I feel that's important. Because as long as the person or the people or the situation is changing and becoming something more, then there's always a possibility. There's always a possibility. But when you refuse to learn or grow or, admit, that the change is needed, that's where you start to kind of keep your development from happening, your evolution, right? So when you really look at these things, you have to look at it from a duality. You have to say to yourself, I'm doing this for me, but at the same time, I'm doing it benefits others. So when you're bettering yourself, you're actually helping other people too. That's why, doing those types of things it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for you to take some time to yourself, right? It's not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing, because now there's a way to do it. Of course, you don't just completely cut off people, because that's still separation. You know what I mean? You have to express. You have to let people know, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. So and they should be receptive to that as well, because everyone needs that, right? Some people need it more than others. So part of it is knowing yourself, knowing that that we are a reflection of each other. We are all growing and learning and evolving in the same life experience. So it's not separate. There's nothing separate with this. So if you can grasp that, then you can actually move past the separate type of mind state into a collective mind state where you begin to understand that what happens to me affects you. What happens to you affects me. And in order for us to make this the best experience possible, we have to work together to do that, right? Which brings rebirth in a whole new light, because then we created a whole new experience, a whole new paradigm that shifts into existence to show us something new from what we saw before. See? And it's a cycle, just like, the seasons. Just like life. It's a cycle. So as that happens and it continuously happens, it could get as subtle as happening in every moment. But as it happens, then that this is it. This is the shift, which breeds more gratitude, which in turn actually breeds more acceptance to the change, which it becomes a energetic movement. And as that energetic movement becomes greater, the momentum is built, and then therefore you're able to shoot past those blockages into a new paradigm. And again, when we're talking about these things, you have to think about it from an infinite standpoint. So the possibilities are endless. So you never want to look at it like, okay, well, I can only do this. No, that's not the case. And they say this in a lot of, I guess, quote unquote, self-help books and, success books and stuff like that. They say this a lot. And they say, what they say is, it's all about the way that you think about it, right? So if you're thinking about it from a limited standpoint, from a lack standpoint, then you self-impose the limitations on yourself. We see it if you go back. I love history, and the reason why I love history because it teaches you a lot of things. So when you look back in history, you see how those moments in history that were the darkest were the times where man's mind was the most closed. And then once that mind began to be open, new shifts started happening and people started becoming, whatever the case may be. But, it's I encourage you to be a student of history in that way and see how that worked. How did that happen? Like, one of my favorite periods and points that I talk about is the Dark Ages, right? When people were, stuck in their ways and they just didn't want to change until it was a devastating, epidemic going on. And then people said, oh, you know what? Now let's change, right? Let's change. And once that started happening, and it was a matter of survival, right? Once that started happening, then so much more, it ushered in that new Renaissance era, right? And a lot of that came from knowledge that was already out there in different places, and think about that for a second. If that knowledge had not been already there, then it wouldn't have reached who it needed to reach in time for it to make a difference. You see? So the way that life works, if you can imagine this, is that for every problem, there's always a solution. So you never look at it like, oh, well, this is too big of a problem. This is something we can't solve. Or no. You say, hey, what do we need to do to put us in a place, in a state where we can be open to what this solution is? Because we need to get past the fact that we think that there are problems that are too big. We got to get past that part, because if we don't, then we'll continuously, that in itself is a limitation. And so what it does is it makes you want to act in a way where you're not looking for a solution. You see, you're doing all sorts of other things, and depending on the situation, it could be a dangerous situation. And so, that's not the route to go. If we continue to be open to the possibility of a solution, then we can always work towards that. Okay. So with that being said, this is going to be the shortest episode that I have because it's just the beginning, and I really wanted to come to you guys from out here in one of my peaceful places, and the significance of this place here, and I'll share it with you guys in this spring, right? When my daughter was young, I used to bring her here. This is the first place where she learned how to fly a kite. And I taught her how to fly a kite here in this park during the spring. And it's so amazing to me how life evolves and changes, and, just to see how much she's grown since then, and how much the world has changed since then, and how much of my life has changed since then. It's just an amazing thing. And it's always a reminder that, change is good. All right. So with that being said, that's it for episode 1, and I'll see y'all on the next one.